All right, so we were playing out here on shop night. Derek bumped into the right rear on the Pantera. And just to show some of the slop on that thing. Hold on a second. I don't know if I can do it with two hands, but basically, wheel bearings need to be done. All right, let's see if we can see how much slop is in this right rear. That's nuts, dude. Here's another view. You can see it up at the brake pads. That's a lot of banging around. Just pulling out the axles, and got a couple little shop helpers. They're doing a good job. All right, so this is kind of interesting. So this axle nut, they're supposed to be torqued to, I think, like 300 foot-pounds. I need to go look it up, but it's 250 to 300, I believe. They're one-time use. Clearly, and this is actually left-hand thread on this one, which you can't really tell, but it's supposed to be left-hand thread. But you can see they didn't use the correct axle nut socket. It's almost like a front end axle socket on a Ford four-wheel drive. Very similar, different size. But they just hammered it with, looks like a chisel. Each one of these is just beat to crap. Each one of the little teeth to tighten it up. So there's also a bunch of gunk on the threads. I'm hoping it's not crazy Loctite. Let's see if I can get that thing off of there, but maybe it just isn't torqued. Who knows? All right, so I'm gonna pull the carrier out of here, undo that upper ball joint, and these pan across the lower A-arm. So I got the right side cleaned up. This is just full of grease and shit, so that's all cleaned up and looking nice, ready for getting that cleaned up. Still waiting on wheel bearings and axles, and I was just sandblasting the center, the half shaft, so it'll have that cleaned up and painted also. New U-joints too. So now I'm pulling the left side off. It wasn't as loose, but still pretty loose. So not very clean over here. I'm gonna pull this off. It's got a little play in it also. And I'm gonna pull the axle out. I'm gonna drop the exhaust to get that out of there, get everything cleaned up, and pull this carrier out and get that sandblasted, and get everything cleaned up and ready for new parts. So pulling the exhaust off so I can get the axle out, and all this stuff was just like finger tight, which is kind of crazy. And those gaskets are just cooked because it was just blowing exhaust through it. Here's some new ones. That's crazy. Sticks, blocks, sticks, that's insane. All right, so I'm gonna push the wheel studs out of these because I think I'm gonna take my rotors and turn them while I have them off. I should replace them with bigger ones, but I didn't order those and I want it together by this weekend, so I'll just turn them. So we are rebuilding the carriers on the back of the Pantera. Axle's worn out. That section right there gets all worn. The other one looks not as bad. Carriers are kind of bunked up a little bit. So pretty common thing. Gonna rebuild it all. I talked to Steve Wilkinson, I think is his name. Wilkinson Pantera. Got a little care package from him. New bearings, bigs and littles, brand new set of axles that are supposed to be, I don't know if they're forged or what, but he has them made. Caps, tool, lower A-arm, shafts, all the goods in here. So we're gonna get that all that stuff together. And I was also over at Ray's, my buddy Ray Lindquist, last night, and we turned the original rotors to get those cleaned up. So I'm gonna be working on that and cleaning up that. All right, Pantera folks, so here's the difference. These are the same axles, as I got the old one and the new one. And here's the issue. So these old ones, made out of kind of a mild steel. If you look at this edge right here, that whole thing is just sunk in where the bearing sat. So there's a nice ridge right there, and that's kind of flattened out. Exact same on the bottom. Here's kind of that bearing surface where that bearing sits. It's just a ball bearing. So that's actually not, it doesn't move, right? But after years of, you know, being driven around, you can see how that softer metal just gets kind of squished. And you can also see where it's kind of chattered and that inner race on the bearing actually spun around at some point. So that's the issue. Here's the new one, obviously. Perfect, how it should be. A little bit stronger, tolerances are more correct. So that's what we're fixing. All right, time to take the carriers apart, press the old bearings out. There's a cap on here that has to come off, and then sandblast the whole thing. All right, doing a little disassembly here on these. I kind of broke these loose. They weren't too bad. I've seen some guys have to, these get stripped out and they have to weld something to the top to kind of get those screws out of there, but mine weren't too bad. Those broke loose pretty easy. I'll do the other one here in a second. But I want to get this all pulled down, press the bearings out, and get this all cleaned up, and I'll throw it in the sandblaster and get it nice and clean, and then we can start assembling. And Steve got me all new bits for this, so it'll be a brand new rear axle carrier, which is pretty rad. Super helpful guy. Looks like that comes right off. Well, and that is the big bearing. So nice, the outer is the big bearing. So that's gonna get pressed out, and there's a bushing that sits in between that basically spaces the two bearings apart. So that one's gonna get pushed out this way. And this is the right side, carved into the grease, right rear. I also got those new bits, that shaft that goes through the center. He gave me everything, so this stuff is gonna be all brand new. I do have, this one had Willwood brakes on it. So I got these little spacer plates for the Willwood brakes that have to come off. I don't even remember that's the right side, but. All right, let's go press them out. So we're gonna press the old bearings out. And I got air, but I was just doing it manually, so those are dropping right out. We can look at the base. I can get a view up there. Can I get a view there? There we go, kinda. There's a view. Thing just comes right down the bottom. There it goes. And there's that center one. And my first bearing up top. So we're almost there. Just about done. All right, so after everything came out, you can see, you take that plate off of the large outer bearing, right? This is the inner bearing where your half shaft comes off this direction. But you take the plate off the outside, and it's press fit through this direction. So the smaller bearing is the inner that gets pushed right up into this lip right here. And that larger bearing is the outer that sits on the outside. So that's how you press them out. And then this guy, you got this bushing that sits in between, basically just like that. So that's how it sits inside the carrier. But all set. Now we're gonna sandblast this thing, get it all nice and clean. Oh, actually, I got new pin shafts too here, so I'm gonna push these out. And then I'm gonna sandblast the whole thing. And then I'm gonna coat it. You can powder coat it. I'm actually just gonna use ceramic paint that I use for all frames and all kinds of stuff, and it's super tough and is awesome, so I'm just gonna do that. It's a cast coat iron, make it look good and clean, and then we'll reassemble. I got the old bushings pressed out. That one came out just fine on the press. That one didn't come out so easy, but we got it taken care of. So I got a new set of bushings. This one's ready to be sandblasted and painted. Sweet. I'm working on sandblasting that first right side carrier. So it'll be done. I started with one of the rear axles, half shafts. I think maybe I'm gonna press the U-joints out of this guy and then get it all blasted, painted, and then I'll put the new U-joints in. So, and shop helpers. Hey, shop helper. A little more progress. I got one of the uprights sandblasted. Pretty good. So I'm ready to clean out the corners on that one and then paint it. And also pulled apart. Got all the U-joints out of that guy, so that one's ready to go in the sandblaster. And then I can do that one, the other side. My favorite cast coat iron. All right, so I'm gonna start doing some assembly and just looking at some differences. I got this all nice and clean and painted, looks great. The new sleeve right there, new set of bushings there. New shaft for the lower A-arm. So this is kind of interesting. Here's the factory shaft, which is actually greasable. So it's got a zerk on that side, and it has this flat spot all the way along and a hole right there, and it's drilled hollow on this end of the shaft, so you can actually grease it and it'll go grease all along. That's all great, and I wish I could keep it, except because the new one is not. But it's hard to see, but this thing is just chewed up, super worn and chewed up and shitty. So I'm just gonna use a new one, grease it up real quick. Really good. All this new stuff. There's the old gnarly nasty shit and the new stuff, so should be pretty awesome. But anyway, we'll get started, see how it turns out. So I pressed the two bushings in there and on the bottom. Now we're pressing the sleeve in. All right, so we're gonna press the big bearing on the base, and I'm not lined up, I'm gonna straighten that out, but basically that's gonna sit right there and press straight down and press that bearing on there. Alrighty, so we got the top bearing pressed in, the new retainer on there. So compared to that old gnarly one with the flatheads in it, a little bit cleaner, looking pretty good. All right, so now we're gonna press wheel studs into each one of those. I've got them sitting down below. I need to adjust that one, but flat side out on that so it doesn't spin. And this is the right rear axle, which has normal right hand threads. The left has left hand threads. And I just got this taped up when I was painting. Okay, so I think I'm good. We're gonna give her the old college try. little bit, we're done. We have all the studs pressed in. Now this whole axle is one chunk. I put a light, just kind of finger coat of grease on there just to kill any moisture, rust, or whatever. I do the same thing on the inside of that. It doesn't really lubricate anything. It just keeps it covered up from moisture in the air and stuff. So anyway, now we're gonna take the carrier, set it down on top of this guy, and then we put in between this spacer in the center, and then we press the small bearing right here on top. So, and then we're pretty much done with the assembly. So let me get that stuff done and we'll see how it turns out. We can get it cleaned up and maybe we can hang it on the car. We'll see. We got it all assembled. I got the other bearing pressed in and the hubs pressed onto the shaft, that retainer, so everything's good. And this sits on there. Yeah, there's one little washer deal that sits in there, spacer, and then the nut sits on there. I can get that torqued up and then I can throw the whole thing in the car. So awesome progress. So this is fun. This guy is supposed to be torqued to 400. And you gotta use this special socket. And if you don't have a torque wrench that goes to 400, as do or don't most of us, you can use this big ass torque multiplier. So that's a 4-to-1 torque multiplier, which means I can stack it up and torque it to 100 foot-pounds on the top, and it'll be 400 down there. One side done, much better. Tie up the rest tomorrow and then go do the other side. So I was doing the left rear, and after I got it cleaned up, somebody did an awesome brazing job on the bottom of that upright. Kind of beat right there too, but I'm gonna put it back together like this, press new bushings in, but I think I'm gonna order a new upright because I'm guessing sometime in the next year I'm gonna be doing this over because I wanna put a big brake kit on it, so I'll show you a new one. Anyway, that's it. All right, left side done. Drive lines back in. Exhaust back on. Right side all done. Drive lines in, exhaust on. I think I'm ready to put the wheels on and test drive. Make sure it's good to go.